Hello and welcome to our webinar, Innovate Your Treasury with Managed Services. My name is Elke Beere and I work for Finastra in partner marketing. And my role today is to be the host of this webinar. So before we kick off, there are just a few housekeeping items. So this is a live webinar, and as such, and as you have registered, you will also get the recording after the webinar as well. You absolutely are welcome to ask questions to the panelists along the entire duration of the webinar. And we will take some time out in the end to answer all your questions for as long as we have time for. Also, if you would like to receive the slides afterwards, then please just drop us a line also in the Q&A widget that you have and just say slides, please, so we know who to send the slides to afterwards. So with that said, I will now hand over to Benjamin Barwick, who will moderate today's session. Over to you, Ben.
Great. Thank you, Elke. And thank you all for joining this webinar where we'll be talking about innovating your treasury operations with managed services. I'm Ben Barwick, and I am the head of customer value selling for treasury and capital markets at Finastra. And I'm pleased to be joined by our expert panel today. First, I'd like to introduce Christina Penne, who is COO and co-founder of RightClick Solutions. She brings over 20 years of experience in the financial software industry, having worked extensively with global financial institutions to drive innovation, streamline operations, and accelerate digital transformation through smarter, more agile testing practices. And I'm also very happy to be joined by Anthony Hammond, who is Senior Director at DXC and brings over 25 years of experience in the capital market space, in middle office and back office roles, as well as in the technology space. As a technical and functional specialist with experience across most of the asset classes, he specializes really in technology modernization. So again, my thanks to both of you for joining today. Now, to kick things off, I want to do a little bit of scene setting. So essentially looking at some of the challenges that we see institutions facing today, and what are the steps that they're actually taking to address those very challenges. So if we move on to the first slide here, essentially what we're looking at is let's say a typical client who follows more of a traditional upgrade and system support type of model. Now, what I mean by that are institutions that are doing upgrades, let's say every 3, 4, 5 years. And from a system support perspective, they have a setup that is more reactive than proactive. Now, the problems this has created for institutions, we've essentially bucketed into sort of 3 main groups: technology obsolescence, risk both from an operational and regulatory perspective, and operational inefficiencies that are created. These have a knock-on effect, both from a sort of organizational perspective, an impact on overall business agility, and ultimately that impacts things from a financial perspective. Now, if we start with the technology obsolescence piece, obviously what we mean there is the fact that users are no longer going to have access to the latest functionality. Also, in turn, we're more likely to find clients that have more of a fragmented IT architecture. That therefore is going to help, it's going to reduce scalability and ultimately slow time to market, limiting your ability to react to market changes or to new growth opportunities. From a risk perspective, there's obviously going to be security concerns. There'll be more limited operational transparency, and all of that is going to create increase the probability of non-compliance, again, both from an operational and a regulatory perspective. Then we look at the impact that will have from an efficiency perspective. Not having access to the latest functionality is usually going to result in a reliance in more manual workarounds. And we know that those tend to be much more error prone. So you end up with resources that are having to resolve those issues, that are doing duplicative tasks, and ultimately you are not optimizing your utilage of your resources that you have available. And all of that leads to higher costs for the institutions and also lost revenue opportunities. Because again, your inability to scale or to move fast enough to take advantage of growth opportunities is a result of the decisions that have been made up to this point by institutions. Now, the obvious question is going to be, well, what are institutions actually doing to address these challenges? And on the left, we can pretty much sum that up in sort of three main areas. First, they're looking to modernize their technology stack. And in doing that, they are trying to simplify their operational processes and have things more centralized. And lastly, they are looking at how they handle their overall partner collaboration. And what we mean by that is really institutions really starting to understand that they cannot be the best at everything. So to increase their overall business agility, to have more flexibility, institutions are partnering with certain partners to essentially hand over, let's say, some more regular BAU type of tasks, to essentially free up capacity to focus really on what will allow the organization to achieve their business objectives. Now, the transformation journey that we see institutions going through is highlighted on the right, where we see institutions moving towards a cloud-hosted managed services type of operating model. And that's where institutions will really be able to optimize their flexibility, their scalability with their IT to ensure that they are in a position to support growth or whatever their business needs may be. Now, during the course of this webinar, we are going to go through each of these steps because obviously it's not something that is going to happen overnight. But really the start of all of this, the key to really kicking this transformation journey off is test automation. And luckily, who better to ask about test automation than Christina? So to kick things off, Christina, really, could you tell us a bit more about why test automation is such an important first step to move away from periodic upgrades, and how does it help change the overall upgrade experience for banks?
Sure. Well, like you said, Ben, in such a fast-paced and heavily regulated environment, banks must continuously evolve their software systems. And to stay agile and to keep up with this changing, continuously changing market, banks needs to have efficient and reliable upgrade solution. And this is where automation is playing a critical role. Automation fundamentally transforms the way upgrades and then software changes are being delivered, ensuring efficiency, reducing risks, improving compliance, and also accelerating release cycles. Leveraging automation, banks can build a comprehensive set of automated tests, tests that includes specific workflows that they have, their own test data, customizations to the software systems, and this way ensure a repeatable set of test scripts and also automation of the comparison of the results. Leveraging this will significantly accelerate upgrades by streamlining the test efforts, by really allowing and enabling for parallel testing, which ultimately reduce the upgrade test cycles. And it's not only that, but leveraging automation risks can be reduced considerably. Defects are found early on that prevents delays in the upgrade. And by using a comprehensive and consistent test coverage, adherence to standardized test processes also ultimately leads to better quality. So all that, as I said, streamlining test efforts, reducing risks, and improving the software quality are just some of the key benefits which makes automation such a key element in enabling automated upgrades and reducing the cycle. And this sets the scene for adopting evergreening models that will empower financial institutions to move away, like you said, from this traditional upgrade models, which comes with a lot of challenges, to upgrading more frequently, and this way stay current, secure, competitive. And transitioning to such a model brings a lot of benefits. It helps streamlining efforts, which has a direct impact on the TCO. Therefore, costs are being reduced. It lowers the risk. Upgrading more often and staying closer to the latest version reduces the risks of defects and then the issues in the production systems, and also unlocks new features which enables for more automation and minimize risks, and ultimately ensure less disruption to the day-to-day business operations, because this reduces the burden on the business users and enables for smoother transition. Ultimately, I would say test automation is not just a technical tool. It is a strategic enabler for financial institutions that brings value across the organization. And it enables not just IT to benefit from lower cost, faster upgrades, but also business side across front office, back office, middle office, who gains more efficiency, can leverage new features, benefit from more automation and higher agility, which ultimately helps in the overall transformation journey for banks and financial institutions.
And Christina, if I maybe jump in there really quick, you mentioned benefits. So actually, if we could put that maybe a bit more in real terms, given your experience with clients and what you've seen working on test automation, how would you actually measure the impact of test automation in more tangible terms? Well, like I said, there are definitely benefits, and then we work with clients worldwide. If I would be to summarize what we hear consistently from clients is that leveraging automation, testing becomes 3-4 times faster. They are able to reduce in an upgrade project testing efforts by up to 60-70%. Another benefit is the fact that it really enables to upgrade more often. Yeah, so clients leveraging automation nowadays are not upgrading 3, 4, 5 years. They have in between upgrades. They really moved to upgrading every year or every 2 years, which is definitely beneficial for them. Excellent. Perfect. Well then, Anthony, maybe if I actually turn over towards you. So in your experience, so after test automation, where else do you see managed services really helping to reduce operational complexity, improving time to market, or even, I guess, helping move towards that evergreening type of model we've discussed?
Thanks, Ben. And it's a good question. As Christina said, test automation is kind of where the journey starts for most organizations. It's where you get the biggest bang for your buck. But then test automation is one step. It's not necessarily the whole journey. So we have to look at where we want to be what our business stakeholders want from us. And I think that's an important consideration as well. What do our business stakeholders want from the applications that we're custodians of for them? They want them to be up to date. They want them to be trouble-free. They want them to be incident-free. If anything, they want their interaction with the applications to be a bit mundane, because it's always there, it always works, it always has the features they're expecting. And that's where we come back to the idea of evergreening. So evergreening is effectively reaching that point where the application is all of those things for the business stakeholder. It's always up to date. It doesn't have underlying technical issues that may be at a database level or supporting software level that may manifest in business impacts for the users. So test automation is the cornerstone of achieving that. Then after that, we need to look at the other activities that need to take place to keep the application in good shape. First and foremost, day-to-day support. You know, that can be looked at as a service in its own right. And just when we touch on managed services, I think sometimes people hear the word managed services and assume that it's all-encompassing, it's everything. And it can be, but it can also be broken down into different segments that may fill a particular gap for a client. So if we look at it and break it down into those components, we can look at technical support, keeping the application up and running, keeping the lights on. User support. So when the phone rings, when a ticket comes through, can someone respond quickly? Can they resolve the issue that the user's having? Can they respond to the query to help the user understand how to get the best out of the system? Change is the next big one. There are very few businesses that stand still, so most organizations have a constant backlog of change that they need to work through. And for a lot of organizations, it's managing the balance between keeping the lights on, user support, and then trying to get change done. And that's often where clients, banks, financial institutions will fall behind and may not be delivering at the rate that their business stakeholders expect. There's activities that underpin that as well, environment and configuration management. And then, as Christina said, we've got testing and upgrades. And then there's also hosting as well. And all of these items, if you break them down individually, some organizations do them all very well. Some organizations do some of them well. Managed service providers can step in to fill the gaps where the client is maybe having trouble. One of the challenges that a lot of organizations have is attracting and retaining talent, particularly if you're working with niche technologies. And that's where managed service providers can help. I think it's really about leveraging the expertise that's available in the market. It's about leveraging the tools that you may not have access to. And also for the organization, it's about taking the opportunity to get back to your core activity. You know, if you're a bank, be a bank. If you're a hedge fund, be a hedge fund. The challenge historically has been that the focus for a lot of organizations is technology, which is great for people like us who live in the technology world and enjoy it. But from an organizational perspective, focusing on your core offering is probably a more responsible thing to do. And that's where I think managed services and managed service providers can step in and, as we said, fill those gaps. And that can be on an individual basis for one service, bundling them 2, 3, 4, or looking at the whole problem. And this is actually a direction that we're seeing more clients heading towards, is full managed services, where they get another party to provide hosting, all the services that are required, and then the organization can just benefit from using the software as it was intended to be used. And that comes back to the concept of evergreening. Having someone who you can trust, who can make sure that it's always up to date, your changes are being implemented in the time that they need to be implemented, the system's up and running when it needs to be, and your interaction with the application just becomes a bit more hassle-free, and you can focus on being a bank again.
Excellent. Appreciate that, Anthony. So I think sort of with that said, I'm going to kill the slides and let's say make this a bit more of a informal sort of chat amongst the three of us. But Anthony, I think probably coming off of what you've just said, I think it'd be best actually to stick with you. Can you actually share with us some examples, some specific examples where a hosted managed services approach really significantly improved upgrade cycles or reduced downtime, actually?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned at the start, I've been working in this space for a long time, 25 years. So when I first started, all testing was done manually. All testing was usually done by people who had other jobs to do, and was often a bit of an afterthought. And that comes with its own problems. It wasn't uncommon to see upgrades run for a lot longer than they needed to, changes be released into production, maybe not with the level of quality that everyone would expect. But over time, as we've seen tools come to market and new approaches be adopted, I personally have been involved in projects where through adoption of those tools and techniques, we've seen really significant changes. Just as one example, from a testing point of view, a client that I worked with, I'd say a medium to large investment bank running a large range of asset classes, a regression test cycle could take up to 2 weeks and could involve, 20, 30, 50 people, depending on how much business involvement was happening. We worked on a project to implement test automation. There was a library of several thousand tests that needed to be done. First step is also improving the quality of the testing. What needs to be tested, what doesn't need to be tested, what's duplication, making sure you fill all the gaps. The end result of that was getting to a point where the regression cycles were coming down from weeks to hours. We could run a full test regression cycle in 4 hours. Now that also means with a lot more confidence about the result. So that's a big benefit. That means you can run full regression cycles for your weekly, monthly, quarterly change deployments into production as well, which often wasn't a reality. The other big one that I think is interesting comes when it comes to environments. A lot of organizations are sitting on environments that are underutilized, or they don't have enough environments. So managed services that involve cloud hosting allow you to have the capacity you need at the right time. So you've got the tools to run the testing, you've got the capacity to create environments, you've got the automation to deploy configuration to those environments, and suddenly cycles reduce significantly, costs reduce significantly, and most importantly, quality improves enormously.
And if we think about it maybe from a more of an automation perspective, Christina, I mean, is there anything you think you would like to add maybe to what Anthony has highlighted here? Again, maybe a bit more on sort of the test automation side of things?
Yeah, same as Anthony. A lot of experiences with different clients, but one that comes to mind now with the bank based in Germany, using one of the Finastra products. They were struggling, again, all manual testing. Their previous upgrade took over 2 years. Therefore, they weren't able to upgrade that often. They were typical release cycle was 3-4 years. And they needed to upgrade and used automation. So we started working with them by really defining relevant test scenarios to cover their day-to-day operations for all departments, automated all those tests, and their first upgrade was completed in less than 8 months. What is also interesting is that since then they kept upgrading every year or two, and I was just talking to them a few weeks ago, and one of the feedback that we got is the fact that is not just benefiting from all the new features and that are available in the new releases, but they are this way able to reduce their investment in all the customizations that had to be built before, because they couldn't upgrade so often and leverage the new features from the product. They had to build and workarounds and customizations to address different regulatory requirements. So that also help them reduce their dependency on customizations and streamline this, which overall also turns into lower maintenance for overall for the system. So yeah, I'm sure there are a lot of examples and benefits across the board, like we discussed earlier.
No, great. Thanks for that, Christina. So Anthony, I'm going to come back to you. And I don't think it's going to be probably too far of a stretch for me to say that some organizations probably view moving to the cloud with a managed services provider as a bit of a leap of faith, let's say. Especially, I think, if you put it in the context of security and compliance considerations when handing over core activities. How would you respond to those types of concerns?
Well, first of all, I get it. You know, it's a stretch for a lot of organizations psychologically to, you know, hand over the keys to the kingdom to an external party. I think increasingly people are starting to get their heads around it and starting to see the benefit. And like many things, for a lot of organizations, it's a bit of a wait and see if somebody else does it first and if it works out for them. But I think there's some topics that we can touch on straight away to sort of help people understand that there are trusted partners out there who can do this and do it properly. Like in the case of DXC, we host workloads for some of the world's biggest organizations. And that means that to do that, we have to do it properly. So that means we have to have, you know, security baked in as part of what we do. A lot of the time when clients ask us to deliver these services, they will give us a set of requirements, and then we point out that they actually need more than that. You know, have they thought about intrusion detection, how they manage that? What about DORA compliance, you know, in terms of resilience? And they will often discover that, you know, the way that they've been managing the application on-prem for the last 10, 20 years or whatever may not be where they would like to be managing it if they were to redo it again today. So I think the key is, if you're considering these topics, talk to a partner who has a proven track record, ask them about the topics that everybody's talking about, you know, DORA, SOC 2, ISO 27001, to make sure that things are done properly and there's resilience. Topics about data encryption, data sovereignty, where will my data be housed? You know, your provider should have thought of that already and should be able to come to you with a strategy that makes you compliant with your regulators. Then there's the topics about segregation. Are multiple clients being hosted on the one environment? In our case, no, everything's segregated. There's complete segregation of all data, segregation of duties of the people who are handling the data to make sure that everything is where it should be and people only have access to what they should do. The other big one is monitoring and continuous improvement. You know, handing over your core applications to another provider and then finding out that they have significant downtime is not acceptable. So how are things monitored? Is the monitoring a part of the core design? How are issues dealt with? Is there automation around issue resolution so that, you know, tickets aren't going off to a human who has to run a script? Can things that can be anticipated be automated so that they never actually manifest? And that includes proactive maintenance, continuous improvement as part of a philosophy for managing it. And then the other main one is really, where have people done it before? Have they succeeded? In the case of DXC, as I mentioned before, we're doing this a lot. We have thousands of engineers. We're partners with some of the biggest cloud providers in the world and some of the best application providers, in your case, Ben. So yeah, it's how can it all be bundled together? Topics like hosting shouldn't be an afterthought. They should be baked into the core strategy.
Excellent. Okay, well, I have one last question, and I'm going to pose the same question to both of you. But Christina, I think we'll start with you for this. I would like to look forward a bit. How do you see sort of the cloud-hosted managed services model evolving over time, especially now when we think about AI and cloud-native applications that are really starting to come to the forefront?
Yeah, good question, Ben. Well, definitely hosted managed services are transforming a lot these days. And moving from reactive traditional models that were focused on keeping the lights on to becoming intelligent, to becoming proactive and highly automated. Next generation of managed services, I see as smarter, more agile, data-driven, and definitely customer-centric. Just few examples, if we need to take some of the streams. Software testing is being transformed a lot. Traditional QA methods are now moving more towards risk-based testing, with tests being selected based on the business impact and risk associated, this way enhancing efficiency and speed. We're talking about self-adaptive test suites that are continuously evolving based on the changes in the application. Testing is being now seen as a continuous testing, integrated with CI/CD pipelines and then leveraged throughout the entire development lifecycle. And you know, AI and then the transformation is also, I would say, very visible in the support and incident management space. If traditionally we would be talking about logging, triaging, resolving tickets, nowadays it is all about predictive and intelligent support, where leveraging AI, you can analyze logs, you can look at the historical incidents and anticipate certain issues before they occur. Also, intelligent ticketing systems are capable right now to automatically triage and route issues to the right team, and sometimes even resolve this some common issues independently. And examples can continue, you know, identifying certain patterns and root causes of the problem, so that solutions can be provided faster and also more reliable solutions based on you know, clear evidences and clear data. There is a lot going on, and I'm sure Anthony can continue and complete the list.
Yeah, for sure. You know, and one of the things that I've seen, you know, because these changes are happening quickly, and one of the things that I've seen that I thought was quite cool recently was I saw the Condor Assistant in action. So AI tools embedded within Condor, so the users can interact directly with the system to do all sorts of things that they may have needed to rely on their tech support teams in the past. I think that's very cool, and we're going to see a lot more of that. So some of the other areas that I see as interesting, and some of my colleagues were telling me about some work they've been doing recently around agental AI. What that means is you'll have multiple applications, each with their own AI agent embedded within them. And when there's an issue, those AI agents interact with each other to propose a solution. So once again, it could be that issues are identified and resolved before they manifest and impact the user experience. I think that sort of stuff is really interesting, and it's evolving really fast as well. One of the other areas that I see as being a game changer will be around integration and reporting as well. Using new technologies, including AI, to be able to understand database schemas and APIs means that, you know, what was complex coding in the past, potentially to create interfaces and integration, could now be natural language, and the same for reporting as well, being able to hand the users back some control over creation of their own reports. So rather than have to go through the traditional cycle of interacting with IT, preparing a spec, iterating through that, building, testing, they can do it using an AI engine, using natural language to describe their own reports. And I think that sort of self-service will mean that the users, and that's really what's important here, will get a lot more out of the application, as well as the apps being cheaper to own and easier to own. And I think it's only the start. I think over the next few years, we're going to see a lot of interesting things unfolding.
Great. I mean, honestly, thank you both for that. Definitely a lot, I think, to look forward to in the future, but I think also, as we know, the future will come here quick. So lots to look forward to. So before we move on to the Q&A piece of this, I think it's probably worth just taking a step back and maybe re-emphasizing a couple key takeaways from what we've discussed during this webinar. I mean, I think first and foremost, the increasing velocity of change that we're seeing in the market requires financial institutions to shift to an operating model that will maximize business agility. And in order to do this, the market is moving towards that cloud-hosted managed services type of operating model. And this is what's going to give them the flexibility to be able to really succeed in today's market. Second, as Christina clearly demonstrated, test automation is going to be the key in moving towards a true evergreening model. Its ability to not only streamlining the testing process, but also to improve test quality is key to ensuring faster, cheaper, and more predictable upgrades. And then lastly, managed services providers have the technical and functional expertise to effectively ensure a well-run application so that you as an organization ultimately can have greater flexibility to focus on other value-add tasks that will allow your organization to achieve its business objectives. And with all that said, I'd like to thank very much Christina and Anthony both for their time and for sharing their insights today. And with that, I'll hand it back over to Elke for Q&A.
Thank you, Ben. So we had a number of questions coming in. One, I think, is more to Christina about customizations. So Christina, how much will customizations complicate your ability to automate testing and reduce upgrade timelines? What can be done to reduce the potential impact?
Okay, well, definitely a highly customized system creates more challenges for the organization. However, from an automation perspective, customizations can be covered as well and included in the test library, so that at the end of the day, the automated tests that are built covers both the core systems and the client customizations, helping them to achieve testing both at the same time. What I would also add here is the fact that as organizations and banks are building such automated tests, they can be used also in testing such enhancements or developments that are done internally. And the clients we work with today, they're using automation not only for the major upgrades that they do every once or every 1 or 2 years, but also on a monthly basis to test these customizations, keeping also this way their automated tests up to date and in line with all the changes that are being delivered and released to production.
Thank you, Christina. I think you made that very clear. Very good. So we have one more question. I think that is more for Anthony. What are the main 1 or 2 challenges banks often face when switching to managed services? How do you limit those risks?
That's a good question. You know, I'd like to say that it's easy, but it's not always. And probably the first challenge that we face is cultural or psychological within organisations. As we touched on before, it's about handing over control of things that you've spent a lot of time and effort building and owning that are critical to the success of your organisation. And I think that can't be bulldozed through. You know, whoever is the managed services provider will need to work very closely with the people who are doing the work today to understand what happens. And I think that has to be done with sensitivity, with a sense of partnership as well, to make sure that, you know, people understand that while the world is changing, the world is not finishing. You know, there's still plenty of activity for everyone to do, and this is just an inevitable change of what's happening. The second part is more procedural. There's a lot of knowledge and assets built into most organisations that aren't necessarily always written down. So it's the handover that's really the key. And I think the only way to do that realistically is to work with an organisation hand in hand for a period of time and treat that as a project in its own right, to work on acquiring all of the knowledge that's needed to understand the business, to understand the full technology stack, to understand the users, who's who, and that needs to be treated as an essential part of the project, with milestones and deliverables all measured out and managed. And I think without taking a structured approach to it, it would be arrogant and naive of an organisation to think that they can just step in and deliver managed services and everything will be smooth. The transition has to be carefully managed.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, that makes absolute sense. Okay, so we have one more question. I think this is definitely for Christina. How quickly can banks typically recoup their investment in test automation?
Okay, that's an interesting one, because it also depends on many factors, and it depends on the level of automation. Yeah, so we've seen clients that decides to start small, others that go for you know, automating a comprehensive set of tests day one. So there are definitely factors that can influence that. But what we see consistently is that for banks that go with automating a quite comprehensive set of tests and leveraging that through a first upgrade, sometimes they manage to recover the investment in automation already through the first upgrade. But if that's not the case, for various reasons, sometimes you know, there's a lot of tests to build and this initial investment is higher. With the second upgrade, in all the implementations that we've done, the investment into automation is recovered, and from that point on, it just continues to accumulate benefits and improve the ROI.
Okay. Yeah, very good. Thank you so much, Christina, for this. So I'm just really looking at some questions. I think some, to me, require a little bit more clarification, and we just take this offline, which just really leaves me to thank really our esteemed panel, as well as the audience, for their time today. So I hope you gained some valuable insights. And that also means we are now closing the webinar, and we wish you all a very good rest of day. Goodbye.
Thank you. Goodbye.
Thank you.